Hey there, thanks for joining me today. This is Laura Lynn with Keep Inking Up. I'm an independent demonstrator for Stampin' Up in San Antonio, Texas. And today's video is the third in a series talking about embossing folders. So today I'm going to talk about another technique using embossing folders, a little bit different maybe than you would like to think of. And for this demonstration, I'm going to be using the Tree Rings Hybrid Embossing Folder. And what I love about this embossing folder is that it's actually part of a larger bundle, the Ringed with Nature bundle that you can find on page 62 of our July to December mini catalog. And I love it because the hybrid embossing folder coordinates then with a set of dies and a lovely stamp set. So this is a really great bundle to use, and I just love the tree rings. I'm a big fan of nature type products anyway, so this is a really great embossing folder. So I do have the stamp set and the coordinating dies. Now, because it's a hybrid embossing folder, what that means is it has a coordinating die that you can set in here so you can cut and emboss at the same time when you run it through your Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. And let me show you a couple of samples of what that looks like. If you were to run just the embossing folder through the machine, this is what you would get. And I have a card sample where I used that in the background. So isn't that fun? I had some trees on this layer, and so I thought that the tree rings would be a nice complement to that. So you can do straight embossing, but if you use the hybrid part and you put the die in, then you can get some tree rings. And I have a couple of different samples. If you were just to cut and emboss, this is the kind of thing that you would get out. But you combine it with, if you combine it with our other dies, I have all kinds of samples here, then you can make other ring slices. So I used so you can see the embossing, so I cut and emboss, but I also used the other dies to cut out the insides, tree rings. So these are all a bunch of different examples of using the other coordinating dies. So you have the, let me see here, you have the other dies that cut out the inside of the tree rings as well. So I'm just trying to describe to you why I love this bundle so much, but let's go ahead and get back to the purpose of this video, which is to show the technique with the embossing folder. And you're not limited to just this embossing folder with this technique. I just wanted to use this particular one with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to ink with the embossing folder, and you can, like I said, you can do this with any embossing folder. So because these are tree rings, I'm going to use soft suede ink, and I don't think it really matters, but I like to put the ink on the raised side, so the side that has the logo on it. So I am going to just take my ink pad and just put ink directly onto the embossing folder, and it's okay that you can see the lines from the ink pad. That's not going to show up when we do this process. Okay, hopefully can you see how there's ink on all of that? I want to make sure there's ink on all of the tree rings the best I can, and like I said, it's okay that there's ink everywhere. Go ahead and close that up, and then I'm going to take a piece of crumb cake paper, and I'm going to carefully lay that right there. Now once you put it down, you don't want to move it, because then it'll just smear. And then I'm going to have just a piece of recycled paper, copy paper. I'm going to lay it down, and I'm just going to rub my fingers all around it. Now, I'm not pressing super hard because, like, remember we had all that extra ink, but I'm just kind of smoothing my fingers over the whole area. So now I'll pick this up, and now, oops. Now we'll carefully, again, I don't want to smear it, so I'm going to carefully lift up the paper, and look at that. I have some lovely tree rings. So we are stamping with our embossing folder. So that's what I'm going to call this, stamping with embossing folders. And then, of course, you can take your dies and cut these out and use them on your projects as well. Oh, there's another embossed one. So you can use this as a background, or you can go ahead and cut your slices up and use them on cards as well. So the stamping with the embossing folder is what I wanted to share with you. Now don't worry about this being inky. Just all I do is run this under my sink, my kitchen sink, and just get all the ink off. And that's great because that's doable because all of our inks are water-based, so they're very easy to clean. So I would suggest that you do not use permanent inks with this technique, otherwise you'll stain your embossing folder. Now staining your embossing folder isn't going to make it not work anymore, it'll just look ugly, and I don't like that. So I do recommend that you only use water-based ink when you're going to use this stamping with embossing folders technique. So I hope that you found this tip helpful, maybe a little different, a different way to use your embossing folders. And like I said, you can use this technique with any embossing folder, not just the tree rings, but I love how this came out. Isn't that fun? Oh my gosh, it's such a fun technique. All right, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you learned something new, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.